Hello and welcome back to me. I come to you with a confession. That confession is that I spectacularly failed at the goal I set for myself. It wasn't even a proper reading goal, it was just to read in general, and I didn't do a lot of that. If you were there for the video I made in late August, beginning of September, saying I would read a bunch of books in September and then I would donate money, which was Read for Palestine or Reading for Palestine. I will still donate the money. However, I did not actually read much that September or the rest of the year, or, in fact, the time prior to that. I read 3 books total this year, and that was a struggle, quite honestly, and I want to talk about that. This comes to you in, I guess, 3 installments. 1, the books I tried to read and failed to finish so far. The books I did actually successfully finish, and maybe why those books. And 3, what the core problem is, and how I'm hopefully going to fix it. So, number 1, let's do the walk of shame, and I'll tell you about all of the books I picked up and put down and haven't picked back up since. All right, some of these might be familiar. I've talked to you about them in September already, but here we go again. Number 1, and probably the book I got the furthest in, is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. It's a cozy fantasy, it's queer, and I thought this would be saving me. And it didn't. And I'm not blaming this book. It is a me problem. I got about halfway through and I enjoyed it. In some ways it worked really well because it's fairly fast paced and the chapters are fairly short. There are some less known English words that maybe I'd be tempted to look up, but overall, like, it wasn't hard to read. But regardless, I didn't end up finishing it thus far. Like, I still want to finish all of these books, but when? Listen. I don't know. The problem with this book was that I have a terrible habit, and you may judge me for it. I'm judging myself for it too. I have a lot of problems with my attention, and sometimes I just skip random books when I'm like, oh, this is a bit tense and I'm getting stressed about it and it's not going fast enough because I'm reading too slowly. So I'm going to just check what happens. So I know some plot points from later on in the book. And at some point, when you know plot points from later on in the book, it's hard to motivate yourself to read the parts before that. So that was the problem with this one. Similar problem with this one. I even annotated bits of it, like this far through. Is Pole Position by Rebecca J. Caffrey. Similar problem where I just read some parts of the back further along in the book. So now I just need to put everything together and it's hard to motivate myself to do that. So I didn't. God, this is really embarrassing. We have Frontier by Grace Curtis. It is small and it's like a sci-fi western. And I was like, ooh, that's gonna be really cool. And it is, but it is also a little bit episodic. So you meet a lot of different characters, but you didn't then don't re-meet them. And it's a bit bleak as well. So I was struggling and I was just reading it very, very slowly. I'm about 30 pages in and yeah. Oops. Next one, Smoke and Shadow, which is an Avatar: The Last Airbender graphic novel. Because, as I will get to in a second, I read another Avatar graphic novel successfully. I thought, oh, maybe that's gonna fix me. But I have the problem of sticking with the story long enough, not skip ahead, and not get distracted a lot as well. So I also didn't finish this one. Don't even know where I'm at this point. I don't think I used a bookmark. I think I just tried and then gave up. And then I thought, oh, maybe a non-fiction book is gonna fix it. What do you think happened? I read Palestine's Horizon Towards a Just Peace by Richard Falk. Richard Falk was the UN Special Rapporteur for Palestine for 6 years. So he wrote about it. And I read another book about Palestine and I thought, yeah, seems relevant at the moment. So I might just read that. And I did until I didn't, about 7 pages in, because it's quite dense. And so it was just kind of hard to feel like I was absorbing the information. Now, I think there are more books, honestly, that I kind of picked up and then didn't continue with, but we'll leave it at that. I think that's enough for now. Let's get to the ones that I successfully read. It's a short list. Let's go in order. I've already shown you The Stars Too Fondly by Emily Hamilton. It's a sapphic, science fiction, mystery-esque story. All of these things make me think, oh, that's a great book. And everything combined makes me think that must be a fantastic book. And somehow I just liked it okay. And I think that is probably also a me problem. Because again, I read this over the course of 4 or 5 months. So at the beginning, I couldn't remember much of when I started reading the middle because there was so much time between. I don't know, I did feel like I didn't quite connect with the characters. They were quite lovable, but at the same time, I wasn't gripped in that way, or maybe I didn't feel the feelings the way I was hoping I would. But then again, we could also probably blame this just on me, I don't know, forgetting how to read, quite frankly. That was my first read. I finished it in August, and I think I started in like March. It was horrendous. And then I read Interviews with Radical Palestinian Women, which was edited by the Show Collective. And this contains interviews with with 10 different Palestinian women, some of them living in diaspora, and some of them living in Palestine. I think one or two living like in what is considered to be, part of Israel. It was very interesting. And I think one of the reasons I was able to finish this was because there's no big descriptions. It's just people talking about their experiences. It was obviously very interesting. There's a lot of different viewpoints. I think some of them might even fully contradict each other. It has been a hot minute since I've read it now. A lot of them are, activists in very different capacities. It was honestly really cool to see all of the different ways they find to advocate for themselves and others. I was very, very impressed with all of the things that they talked about. You have different voices, they have put different things into focus, and I learned a lot about obviously the individual experiences, but also just about different actors and viewpoints that can be had. There's also a section with a glossary that summarizes parts of the history for context, as well as some definitions for terms. Yeah, I found it really, really interesting to read. I would recommend it if people want to learn more, especially because, women are often in a very horrendous position in these sorts of conflicts, and I think it's really good to hear from them directly. There's even one queer woman that talks about her experience, which I thought was super interesting because obviously I'm queer, and it is a reason that is being used against queer people that advocate for Palestine, like saying that they wouldn't be accepted and therefore they shouldn't be in support of Palestinians, which is a terrible argument, but also obviously, queer Palestinians exist also, and they deserve to be heard. So yeah, this was very nice to read in a learning sense. Obviously the content's not so nice, but especially how a lot of them talked about community, I was just very impressed, basically. And then, in a real tone shift, I also read another Avatar: The Last Airbender graphic novel, which is The Rift, and I honestly kind of forgot what happened. That is... my god, depressing. Right, I remember. Basically, I hope this is not going to be too much of a spoiler. Basically, Aang wants to revisit a place that was kind of holy to the air nomads and do this ceremony with his friends and show his airbending disciples what that's like and share his culture. And then they find that because there's I think there's iron or something in the ground, there's actually excavation site where a lot of industry has been built. And it's kind of about that conflict. And I thought it was really interesting. I do plan on reading the rest of them. We'll see how successful that's going to be. But as you can tell, the 3 books I actually did read, one of them took me a really long time and a lot of persistence and a long holiday where I didn't have much else to do. This one was just really interesting and current and also fairly easy to read in the sense that it's not very thick and it's contained interviews. It's not very densely academic because obviously people speaking, I feel like it's just easier to read. And then this is literally a graphic novel, which doesn't mean can't be, impactful, but it is quicker to read. So those are all of the books that I managed to read. As you may have been able to tell, there are some general themes why I didn't manage to read more this year. 3 books isn't really that much for what I would like to be reading. I think there's 2 main issues. The first one is that I just don't have reading integrated in my day. I have an irregular schedule. I don't always have the same times off. I might be working a lot in one part of the week and then not at all during another part of the week. I may be working in the morning or in the evening. And so it's really hard to have any kind of routine. I also struggle setting up a routine, but it is even harder when you work at random times. So I cannot stick with a specific, I'm going to just read before bed, because sometimes I'm so tired, I just collapse. That kind of makes it extremely hard to find the time to read. I also do just struggle to give myself time to enjoy my hobbies between work and household stuff. I am very irregular with my hobbies. That's just kind of how my hobbies function, but obviously you can do that with reading, but it's not great. I want it to be a hobby that I do consistently. But I think the main reason I'm struggling is because I'm being a perfectionist about reading. What I mean by that is I literally want to perceive and digest every single bit of what I'm reading. If I listen to an audiobook, I'll rewind multiple times because I'm no, I need to absorb it properly. I need to have heard every single single word. I need to have imagined it. When I was joking earlier that I forgot how to read, I do think it's to some extent I have how to just get immersed. I think I managed it with the Murderbot diaries that I listened to as like an audio play. But since then, not really successfully. It is interesting because I don't have that issue with like YouTube videos that I listen to a lot while I'm doing dishes and things like that. If I miss something there, I'm like, yeah, okay. Or if I read articles or other things, like I don't have that same problem. But with books and audiobooks, I need to have absorbed 100%. And that's stupid, especially if that stops me from actually reading. Because when I do that, in combination with the fact that, as I've mentioned, I get easily distracted, it is excruciating to try and read. Because I'll start reading, I'll get distracted, I'll think about something else, but I don't know at what point I got distracted, so I'll read the same section. What often happens is that I reread it 5 times because I get distracted or sidetracked at the same exact point every time. And when you try to read a page and it takes you like 10 minutes, that is extremely frustrating and super demotivating, because then you look at a book and instead of thinking, oh yeah, I can read that in a couple of afternoons, you think, oh yeah, that's going to take me a month. And it's not very enjoyable to do that. You don't really get absorbed into the story. You don't really enjoy like the flow of the words. You're just kind of overthinking it. It's been extremely frustrating. And again, it makes it hard to tell if I even enjoyed the book to begin with. But then also, I don't want to just give up on it. The book might actually be really good and enjoyable if I only knew how to properly commit to it and I properly read it without overthinking it. Like the reading itself. It's really ridiculous. Now, I do think I can fix this, and here's how. So obviously 2 issues, and I have 2 separate ideas on how I'm going to fix them. 1, for my lack of time and energy to put to reading. I think that's a problem with prioritizing, and I work a lot with to-do lists. I don't have like a daily schedule because that irritates me. And I will always have like 1 or 2 things where I'm like, that needs to be done today. And as silly as that feels, I will just be putting reading on that to-do list and I will do it and I'll prioritize it. And hopefully more days than not, I will actually just be reading. Like 15, 30 minutes if I can, that's it. And then lastly, to address the perfectionism issue, I'm going to basically, as soon as I've read a line, I will cover it with the bookmark. So I can't just automatically jump back up and reread it again and again, like I tend to do. Skipping ahead is also an issue, but I can't. Listen, I'm not going to be using 2 bookmarks to just frame that one line I'm reading. Maybe I will, but we'll see how desperate I get. But for now, I'm just going to cover what I've just read to prevent myself from just like jumping back again and again. And in German, we say Mut zur Lücke. So like, I guess brave the gap. I'm just going to be okay with the fact that maybe I'll miss some part. I'm sure it'll be fine. I hope this is going to help me fix my reading and mean that I'm going to be reading more than 3 books this year. That would be really nice. Do please let me know if you have the same problem, so I know I'm not alone, because I do feel a bit silly and embarrassed making this video. But also, if you have any tips on how to fix it, whether they've worked for you, whether they've worked for someone else, or whether you just think that might be worth a try, please do share. I'm open for any idea, and I'll see if it works for me or not. I will try to report back how it goes. I will try to do it even if it doesn't work. I really hope it works. Hopefully see you soon with results. Bye bye!